Okay, next project is a 2020 Chinese pit bike. It's a Tao Tao Motorsports 140.
Shout out to Fastlane Richie for selling me this bike.
It's relatively complete. It's got very little compression. Very easy to kick over. So we're going to test it for spark, check the valves and see if they're in compliance, see if we can get a little better compression, and if it's still low, we'll do a compression check, see if we can get this thing going.
Alright, so let's start off by checking for spark. We're going to remove the spark plug. And the tip of the electrode is nice and brown. Looks like it was a good mixture. We'll plug it back into the boot. Rest it against the head here. Kick it over a few times looking for spark and hold it gingerly while I shock myself. I did see spark, so we'll get you in for a better look. And we have spark. So now that we've established that we have spark, we'll start the process and checking the valves. First, you want to remove this flywheel cover. There are 3 8mm bolts, and this one under the shifter here is tricky to get. And once you've loosened all 3 of the bolts, you want to gingerly pull it off, trying very hard not to lose any of those bolts. And now we've exposed the flywheel on the left and the drive sprocket on the right. And you can see there's a notch in the casing. That's your timing mark. So we're going to spin the flywheel until the T lines up with that notch. And that's how we know we're at top dead center. The piston's all the way up at the top, right about there. Alright, now that our flywheel's set, let's start taking off this cap for the intake valve. Again, 2 8mm bolts. Pull the cap off, try not to drop any of the bolts down in the intake hole. Let's see if there's any slap in the valve here. Oh yeah. As I suspected, seems like the intake valve is stuck open. Alright, do the same thing with the exhaust valve. For this one, you might want to prop the front end of the bike up, as oil seems to spill out as soon as you pull this valve cover off. But it looks like we're within spec on the exhaust valve. So, intake valve is clearly a problem, so we got to start getting this cylinder head off. Start by removing the exhaust and unbolting this intake manifold for the carburetor assembly. Again, these are two 8mm bolts. I usually just slide the carburetor back onto the cylinder. I'll put the two bolts back in so that I don't lose them. You can also see I already pulled the cam cover off, exposing the cam sprocket. One 10mm bolt behind that. Now we're going to loosen up the bolt that holds the two parts together. This guy just joins the cylinder head to the actual cylinder. And then the 4 nuts for the head studs. Sometimes the washers don't want to come off with them. You got to just whack them a little bit. Pay close attention to the copper washer. It should be on the lower left. That's got to go back in the same spot. Alright, there are 3 bolts that hold on the cam sprocket. These are 9mm. It's easiest to get these off with a 3/8 drive electric impact or something similar. I usually have pretty good luck by just whacking the wrench. So once you've removed the 3 bolts, I usually take a flathead screwdriver and I'll pry the cam sprocket off of the camshaft. And then you want to just work the chain off of the sprocket. And I'll stick a screwdriver back in to keep the chain from falling back into the bottom end. And now, being very cautious not to drop the chain into the bottom end, you want to hold on to the chain while you slide the cylinder head off of the studs. And then I'll guide the chain down in front of the cylinder head so it can't fall back in. And there you have it. Intake valve is definitely stuck. It's wide open, so there's no compression. That is the culprit, a bent valve. And it runs. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching.